Okay, so today I'm going to give you a quick run through on how to deploy Spoke's Twilio runtime serverless functions for our developer API. This is an open source repo available from Spoke's GitHub account. You can go there and check it out. There is some README details around how to do the install. I'm just going to walk through those steps with this video overview. There's a few things that you need as prerequisites in order to get this up and running. First of all, you need a Twilio account or project. You need a Spoke developer account. You need some Spoke developer API credentials, and then on your local machine, you need Node.js 12, you need NPM 6, you need to install the Twilio CLI, and you need the Twilio Serverless plugin installed as well. It's a pretty simple process. What I've got here is I've got Twilio Studio set up. I've got my Twilio Functions tab open, and then over here I've also got the Spoke Developer API where I've already created some credentials. So the first thing we're going to do is walk through the various command line steps. I'm going to jump across to my terminal and just step through these. It's a pretty fast process. The first thing we're going to do is check out the Twilio Runtime Spoke API project. I'm going to change into that folder, and then we're going to do an npm install. All right, so that's got our basic local development and deploy environment configured. The next thing we need to do is just set up some environment variables, and these are used as part of the serverless deploy process. So the project ships with an example env file. Just need to copy that to .env. You need to edit it, and then copy and paste the client ID and secret from the Spoke Developer API that you created earlier. All right, so that's those two credentials added to the .env file. We also have the auth service URL and the API URL, and those four attributes are used to get an OAuth2 access token from the Spoke authentication service. Okay, so we're pretty close to being up and running. We've checked out the code, we've done our npm install, and we've edited our environment variables. The final step is to log in to our Twilio account so that when we run the serverless deploy, it can deploy into that account. So we just do Twilio login. We get the credentials from our Twilio account over here. Copy that. We copy the auth token, give it a name, and then one final step is to go Twilio profiles used to make sure that we are using that account. So next step is to run the deploy. Pretty quick and simple process. We just go npm run deploy. Now our deploy process does two things prior to running the serverless deploy. It does a lint of the code and it runs some tests to make sure that they pass. You see we've got a little bit more work to do here. But in the meantime, you can see it's running away and it's deploying the Spoke functions into the Twilio account. Here's the service domain, Spoke API service-7807. Notice that these functions are all protected. This means that they're only internally accessible from within other Twilio services, and then this shared asset file is marked as private. That means it's only available to other functions within the same Twilio service. So I'm going to jump across back to the Twilio console. First thing I'm going to do is just validate that my service deployment is correct. You can see that we have the Spoke API service. We've got a couple of functions. Let's check our environment variables, and you can see that the environment variables we defined earlier in the .env file have been deployed as part of the serverless deploy. So that's great, we're up and running. So what does that mean? Well, here's where it's really useful. Inside Twilio Studio, you can call a serverless function directly via the functions widget. So I'm just going to move my window over here. So I've got a very basic flow I'm going to create. I'll do a gather input on call. So we'll get some information from the caller. And we'll say, hello, please enter the extension. We'll save that. Leave all those settings as they were otherwise. And then we're also going to add a run function widget here. This is the real where the magic really occurs. I'll connect that up. And here you can see I can now actually go in and select the Spoke API service. By default, we've deployed into the dev environment, and I'm going to call the getExtension function. Now, the getExtension function accepts one parameter. You can see that in the actual code itself. The parameter name is extension, and the value is going to be the widgets.gather1.digits. Okay. So once I've done that, then I've got two particular output paths, a success or a fail. And what I'm going to do is say, well, I have successfully retrieved the extension details, and I'm going to redirect the call to this extension. So the URL is also really interesting because what we're doing inside the function is returning what we call a TWIML redirect URL. Now, the way to access the attributes that are returned from the function are inside this .past body here. And if I go back to my Twilio functions and look at getExtension, I can see that the name of the attribute I am returning is TWIML redirect URL. So I'm just going to copy that across and add that into .past. And we are done. All right, so very quickly, what we've done is we've got our Spoke account, we've got our Twilio account, we've set up a developer API credentials, we've deployed these functions into your Twilio account, and now you can build a completely custom Studio flow that takes in a call, gathers an extension, looks up that extension from the Spoke API, and sends the call across to that extension. In future videos, I'll show some of the other things you can do, such as make routing decisions based on availability, say things based on attributes that come back from the API call. But that's a very quick overview of how to get yourself up and running quickly with Spoke and Twilio Studio.